ستقوم القوات المسلحة والشرطة المدنية بالثأر لشهدائنا.
With each passing day, the calls grew louder. The pressure on Mugabe mounted.
When you have two bulls wanting to fight, you have to know how to tame both.
And this priest persisted.
Did I feel the pressure? I'm a tough nut.
As a mediator between Mugabe and the military, it was up to Father Mukanori to make sure the guns on the streets stayed silent. And the only sounds that the former president heard were the cries of his people and the reasoned voice of a longtime confidant.
What did those crowds mean to former President Mugabe? What did he say?
You saw that they spoke.
And he listened to them?
What are the results? You see the results. That's a sign that he listened.
Did it break him?
It moved him. It moved him in this sense that he realized they are speaking to say, this is enough.
The negotiations were long.
Sometimes in a day we would go to 3 different places.
But they were always civil.
It was not a fight. It was a discussion.
The generals even saluting the man they looked to overthrow.
In a few weeks from now,
it was during this address that the world thought Mugabe was ready to go. The resignation letter was already drafted, but before sending, Mugabe asked for just a few more weeks.
Listening of a 93-year-old is not the same as listening of a 25-year-old.
Eventually, says the priest, the cries were heard, and a new president of Zimbabwe took the stage. Stripped of his office, Mugabe still wishes there was a more systematic transfer of power, says Father Mukanori.
He said he is available to Emerson. He is available. He is at his disposal. He does not vanish from life. He's not dead, but he is vanished from limelight.
A man who ruled with an iron fist, perhaps not willing to completely let go. David Mackenzie, CNN, Harare.
ستقوم القوات المسلحة والشرطة المدنية بالثأر لشهدائنا.
With each passing day, the calls grew louder. The pressure on Mugabe mounted.
When you have two bulls wanting to fight, you have to know how to tame both.
And this priest persisted.
Did I feel the pressure? I'm a tough nut.
As a mediator between Mugabe and the military, it was up to Father Mukanori to make sure the guns on the streets stayed silent. And the only sounds that the former president heard were the cries of his people and the reasoned voice of a longtime confidant.
What did those crowds mean to former President Mugabe? What did he say?
You saw that they spoke.
And he listened to them?
What are the results? You see the results. That's a sign that you listened.
Did it break him?
It moved him. It moved him.
Treason.
Analysts say the North Korean soldiers' dash across the border, with every compelling sequence captured on closed-circuit footage, was such a humiliation for Kim's regime that the repercussions could be felt among Kim's top generals as well.
I think the fallout will go higher up to a commanding person who were not able to stop from this happening, because this is very high-profile defection. It's very embarrassing for the Kim regime. I mean, even just all those tapeworms coming out of the soldier's body, all of this is very, very embarrassing to the regime.
Experts say the commanders of these units could be sent to labor camps, could be demoted, or sent for re-education. Another measure the regime is taking to prevent this from happening again, North Korean workers were seen digging a trench at the spot where the soldier made a run for it. Meantime, the South Korean soldiers who risked gunfire to crawl to the North Korean and drag him to safety have been given medals for their bravery. The 24-year-old at the center of all this is now off life support, his doctors say, is out of the ICU, but is still suffering psychological trauma.
Last night, that he had a dream that he was kidnapped to North Korea again.
Dr. Lee Cook-jong says he's had to reassure the young man that he's safe.
London went on high alert seconds after citizen reports of shots fired in one of the busiest shopping areas. It wasn't terrorism, no evidence shots were fired, but nerves are running high. President Trump chose a strong Thanksgiving Day message to the troops about winning against terror.
We know how to win, but we have to let you win. They weren't letting you win before. They were letting you play even. We're letting you win.
But there is good reason to worry this holiday season. U.S. intelligence officials remain alarmed that ISIS will again strike. The State Department warning U.S. travelers that ISIS and al-Qaeda have the ability to plan and execute terrorist attacks in Europe. German intelligence already believes it's facing a plot to attack holiday markets. Last year in Berlin, a person drove a tractor-trailer into a Christmas market, killing at least a dozen people. ISIS remains motivated.
ISIS has always looked to conduct external operations. They have long tried to conduct terror attacks outside of their declared caliphate.
This year, ISIS may be more desperate. With the loss of their strongholds in Iraq and Syria, ISIS is strengthening its affiliates in Yemen, Libya, Niger, and especially Somalia, looking for new bases of operation. In Somalia alone, the U.S. conducted 7 airstrikes in 6 days against al-Shabaab, the al-Qaeda affiliate, and ISIS. One strike killing 100 militants, according to the Pentagon. Al-Qaeda and its affiliates are also ramping up efforts. The reliance on special operations forces has expanded under President Trump. There are now approximately 2,000 U.S. troops fighting ISIS inside Syria. But military experts say it's not enough to stop the threat.
Military power is not enough to defeat ISIS or to defeat terrorism. We cannot shoot our way out of this problem. We cannot kill our way out of this problem.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jim Sciutto in today for Jake Tapper, and we begin today with the politics lead. President Trump spending the day after Thanksgiving on the phone with foreign leaders and on the golf course with Tiger Woods and Dustin Johnson. But the president's holiday weekend also includes new developments in the Russia investigation. Michael Flynn's lawyers say they are not sharing information with the president's lawyers anymore. A source tells CNN that could mean the fired national security advisor may be cooperating with the special counsel. We'll have more on that in a moment, but let's start with CNN's Jeff Zeleny. He's in West Palm Beach, Florida, with the president. Jeff, what are you learning about the president's calls today with foreign leaders?
Well, Jim, we do know that President Trump just a short time ago was set to speak with Egyptian President al-Sisi to condemn that deadly terror attack in Egypt that claimed more than 230 lives. Earlier today, the president also spoke with Turkish President Erdogan to talk about Syria. Now, all of these together, in addition to the call with Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier this week, makes the White House's case that this vacation is a working one. On a sunsplash day in Florida, President Trump hitting the links with two of the biggest names in golf.
Mr. President!
Tiger Woods and Dustin Johnson. The White House rarely confirms when the president is golfing, but he made the announcement himself on Twitter, saying he would be heading over to Trump National Golf Club, Jupiter, to play golf quickly. He departed after more than 4 hours at the course. His visit marking the 80th day he spent at one of his golf properties since taking office, and his 100th day at a Trump-branded property. Many Americans and more than a few presidents play golf. It's only notable because of what Mr. Trump repeatedly said before winning the presidency.
If I win, I may never see my property. I may never see these pieces again because I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to go play golf, and believe me.
The president also talking by phone today with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan about the conflict in Syria. The Turkish foreign minister said Mr. Trump pledged to stop arming a Kurdish militia, the YPG, that the government considers a terrorist organization. The president also condemning the attack today in Egypt, killing more than 230 people and wounding more than 100 others in the deadliest terror strike on Egyptian soil. He called the president of Egypt to discuss the attack, which he also seized upon to push his immigration agenda, tweeting, "We have to get tougher and smarter than ever before, and we will. Need the wall, need the ban. God bless the people of Egypt." The president is also turning his attention to the tax plan up for a vote next week in the Senate. He offered a preview during a Thanksgiving Day call from Mar-a-Lago with American service members around the world.
Now we're working on tax cuts, big, fat, beautiful tax cuts. And hopefully we'll get that, and then you're going to really see things happen.
The president is set to meet with congressional leaders at the White House and attend a weekly lunch of Senate Republicans on Tuesday. The Senate Republicans still don't have the votes to pass the sweeping tax overhaul amid concerns of the bill's effect on the deficit.
Congress is talking about tax cuts that will add trillions to our national debt and hurt our economy.
Senator Ron Johnson has announced his opposition, with Senators Susan Collins, Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, and Lisa Murkowski all voicing concerns. Senator Rand Paul will likely support the plan, with Senator John McCain as a wild card. As America marked Black Friday, the president's campaign joined in on the annual day after Thanksgiving shopping rush, with Trump merchandise marked down 30%. Now, Jim, the president's response to the Egyptian terror attack was particularly interesting because he did use it to promote his own immigration ban and building the wall. But particularly, let's take another look at that. The president talked about Egypt. Egypt is not one of the 8 countries, as you know, that was included in the third version of the Trump travel ban. It simply wasn't included. And we do also not know who is responsible for that deadly terror attack in Egypt. But nevertheless, Jim, the president's still using that to promote his own agenda in that tweet.
No question that travel ban still working its way through the courts. Jeff Zeleny, thanks very much. Now.
Also happening here, a major global summit will be held in India next week, but the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, is not sending a high-level team, and several officials say it is for one reason and one reason alone, because the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, is leading this U.S. delegation. Let's go to Michelle Kaczynski. She's our CNN senior diplomatic correspondent who broke this story. And so, Michelle, your sources are saying, no doubt this is a snub, a major snub to Ivanka Trump.
Yeah, I mean, there have been these obvious and sometimes jarring differences that we've seen between the State Department and the White House. And the question is always, well, have those tensions been smoothed out? How are things going now for Secretary of State Rex Tillerson? But now multiple sources inside the State Department and a source close to the White House say those tensions are still there. And now they're being felt in this trip that first daughter and senior White House advisor Ivanka Trump is about to leave for this weekend for India. This is called the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. It is put on by the State Department, and the theme this year is women entrepreneurs, which she's been heavily involved in. In fact, she was invited on this trip by India's Prime Minister Modi himself. But these sources say that Secretary Tillerson and his inner circle aren't sending anyone senior, and that they've put out this rule that nobody above a deputy assistant secretary level is allowed to go, and that the acting assistant secretary for this region was slated to go on this trip, but Tillerson and his team pulled her off of it. And these sources say the reason is because they don't love the fact that Ivanka Trump is the one headlining this trip and leading the delegation, and that they don't want to bolster this. So when you look at this trip in the past, President Obama has gone multiple times. Secretary Kerry has gone more than once. Last year it was Kerry, an undersecretary of state, 2 assistant secretaries. And this year, I asked a spokesperson for the State Department who exactly is going, and the list hasn't been made public yet. It may not be finalized yet. But they did send me a short list of the top government officials who were supporting Ivanka on this trip, and none of them were in the State Department, except, of course, for the U.S. ambassador who's already in India. So you could say, well, this is an Obama-era creation. The State Department is trying to cut back on its budget. We all know that. And there's no permanent assistant secretary for the region who's yet been confirmed. But the responses that we get from these sources are, well, okay, if you're going to send a small delegation, then send your highest level person that you can and then cut back in other ways. And a source close to the White House says, this is Rex Tillerson just not loving this idea and not supporting Ivanka Trump in this. I should add, too, that the State Department won't go on record on this subject, and neither will Ivanka Trump's spokesperson, Brooke.